Hey, okay, we are here to do lecture 8. We're now looking at aerobic exercise prescription. Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. All right, this says exercise prescription. Just know we're looking at the aerobic exercise prescription um, from ACSM, which is the American College of Sports Medicine. So what we're going to look at is this Fit VP framework. And so what this framework is, it basically this acronym that we're going to use with these different variables, and we're going to kind of define each variable and then kind of add different ways to achieve or kind of work toward meeting the goal for those different ones. So we're going to customize this principle, this Fit VP principle, to meet the unique goals and needs of every individual. Like I said a second ago, what we're going to talk about is adopted from the most recent recommendations from the American College of Sport Medicine, which is ACSM. The American Heart Association, the AHA, also uses those same guidelines, as well as the CDC. So CDC, ACSM, AHA, everyone uses these aerobic exercise guidelines. Okay, so starting with our first variable, frequency. For frequency, we're looking at how many days per week should we do aerobic exercise. 5 days a week for moderate intensity aerobic exercise, or 3 days a week for vigorous intensity aerobic exercise. You can also do a combination of both, which is probably what most people do, such as a light jog or a light walk on one day versus doing like a higher intensity type workout, like a HIIT workout, or playing a sport or doing some sort of other intense activity. So we will define on kind of in the next part when we look at intensity and how do we define moderate versus vigorous. So just know moderate, 5 days a week, vigorous, 3 days. So what is moderate intensity? We can measure moderate intensity in many different ways. One way is to look at something called VO2R, which is VO2 reserve. So 40 to 59% VO2R for moderate versus vigorous intensity is 60 to 84% of VO2 reserve. This is recommended for kind of our healthy adults, healthy individuals. So we're like, okay, what is VO2R and how do I even know if I'm there? And so other ways we can prescribe intensity is by looking at heart rate reserve, age predicted max heart rate, percent VO2 max, and then one of my favorites is rating of perceived exertion. And so all these other measures are mainly for exercise scientists to use during research, where we can get someone's VO2 reserve and take percentages of it. We can get someone's heart rate reserve. We can get their VO2 max and take percentages of it. But again, I find that kind of difficult for the average person to do or be able to measure. So how do we actually measure this and know how hard we're working? This one I do like is the percent of age predicted maximal heart rate. And so how do we define maximal heart rate? One of the easiest equations is doing 220 minus your age, okay? That gets you some sort of maximal heart rate goal. And it's a very general equation. There are other equations that will be slightly different and give a slightly different number than this one, but this one is very simple, and that's why I like it. So 220 minus your age can get you an estimate of what your maximal heart rate is. And then we can take percentages of that. Such as like 50 to 60% is considered like low to moderate intensity. If we look at like 75 to 85%, that's like mid-moderate. If we look at 95 to or 90 to 100%, that's like extreme, like very high intensity, vigorous type exercise. And so we can get percentages of our max heart rate, or we can use rating of perceived exertion. This is RPE. So we would do this by looking at these two charts here. So this one on the left where we have 1 at the bottom and then 10 at the top, that's very simple. So like 1 through 10, very light activity to max effort activity. But what's used in like this exercise science kinesiology field is this one on the right side, which is the 6 to 20. This is called the Borg scale. So BORG is the name of this RPE scale. And so 6, and I don't know why it starts at 6 and not at 1, but 6 is no exertion, little to no movement. You're very relaxed. You're at 20% of your max heart rate. And then we look at like 11, which is light exercise, minimal sweating, but I can still talk easily. I'm about 60% of my max heart rate. We go up to 15. This is a hard type workout. I'm sweating, I'm able to push, and I can still maintain proper form. So I'm still doing okay, but I would consider this to be a hard workout. I'm at 80% max heart rate. We go up to 19. This is extremely hard. I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm near my muscle exhaustion. I'm almost done. I can't push much further. I'm at about 100%. And so this is a very well-renowned, used a lot by researchers, by exercise scientists, as well as kind of, and maybe not the lay person, but someone who does have some knowledge of, kinesiology and exercise science can kind of look at this chart and they can know where there would fall like on a workout. And so this is a way to assess how hard we're working. One that's not on your slides, but I will talk about it right here, is called the talk test. And you may be familiar with the talk test. So talk test is if I can talk like I am right now and carry on a conversation while I'm exercising, I'm probably exercising at a very low intensity. If I am exercising and I'm able to get out several words to like create a fragmented sentence or to get a point across, that's probably moderate intensity. And if I'm exercising to where I'm completely breathless and I can only say one word at a time, then I'm exercising at a vigorous intensity. And so that talk test is another really good way for the average person, the lay person, to be able to define what intensity they're exercising at. All right, so what about our time? So for substantial health benefits, individuals should achieve at least 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity exercise. So this is anything that gets your heart rate up to where you're breathing heavy and you can still get out, a fragmented sentence, that creates some sort of sweating, some sort of fatigue due to that workout. Or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. So this is per week, okay? That's not very hard to do. I don't think that's hard at all. And so this is what is suggested. You can also do a combination of, so the 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. So that's our time frame. But I want you to understand that this is for like maintaining your health. It's like maintaining your weight, maintaining your cardiorespiratory fitness, maintaining like your muscular endurance fitness, okay? This is maintenance. If we want to see additional, more substantial health benefits for moderate intensity exercise, we need to increase the 150, double it basically, to 300 minutes a week. Or increase the vigorous intensity exercise to 150 minutes. So basically doubling what you had done, okay? That will help with weight loss. That will help with an improvement in cardiorespiratory function, improvement in muscular fitness. Just doing the 150 minutes a week of moderate, that's maintenance. When we double it, when we increase it, that is for additional, more substantial benefits, okay? All right, what type of exercise are we doing? All types of physical activity are beneficial if they are of sufficient intensity and duration. So if we are meeting that 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 to 150 of vigorous at a high intensity or at that moderate intensity, it should be sufficient. But what we want to think about is rhythmic, continuous exercise. Major muscle groups, most typical. This would be jogging, running, Okay, sprinting. So anything like that. Cycling, swimming long distances, even jump roping, doing a stairmaster, stair climber, doing the elliptical. So anything that is large muscle, rhythmic, continuous exercise, going through a large range of motion, that is usually what we consider to be that aerobic type exercise. Intermittent exercise is also acceptable. This is, so two examples is one would be interval training, to where like we would do jump rope and then we would run on the treadmill and then we would cycle. And then we would just kind of repeat that over and over again at different high intensities. So that would be an interval type workout. Or stop and go sports may also be used to accumulate the recommended fit needed for cardiorespiratory fitness. This would be like stop and go sports like soccer or football or basketball, or any sport where there's a high intensity activity period and then like a short aerobic recovery period and then high intensity, short aerobic recovery. So the stop and go. So yeah, that is our last T for type. Next, we're looking at volume. Volume for aerobic exercise is calculated in something called MET minutes, okay? So MET minutes is, first we have to know what a metabolic equivalent is, and so that's what a MET stands for. So MET minute is a metabolic equivalent. METs per week, so MET minutes per week is, and I'll define that in just a second. We'll do some math in just a second. So let's first start with 1 MET is defined as the energy you use when you're resting or sitting still. So if you're sitting down watching this video, if you're laying in bed, whatever you're doing, if you're at a computer desk, you are at 1 MET. So me sitting right here, 1 MET. Sitting, resting still. So if we look, what is an activity of a 4 MET value? What does that mean? It's 4 times the energy required for me to sit still. So me sitting still is 1 MET. So if I'm doing an activity with a MET value of 4, that means it's 4 times the amount of energy required to do nothing, okay? And so what is a MET minute? So let's say I am going on a 20-minute jog at a MET of 8. So my MET level intensity for my jog or my run is a MET value of 8. Well, if I did that for 20 minutes, then I would do 20 times 8. And so if we do 20 times 8, that's 160 MET minutes. So 160 MET minutes is what I would get there. So then you would do, okay, well, how many times am I going to do that per week? And so you would multiply it by like 3 times per week or 5 times per week. And did we accumulate this 500 to 1,000 MET minutes? Okay, so let me give you more examples. So here is like energy required for vigorous and intense exercises. So this is like the MET value for different things. So we look over here, we see hiking, weightlifting, dancing, biking, basketball, swimming, running, competitive soccer, jump roping. So basically you can get out like your phone, your calculator, and you can do this, and basically will help you first to understand how to calculate this. All right, so let's say that I'm doing competitive soccer. So competitive soccer is at a 10. So you would basically just do 10, and then you would multiply it. So if I did competitive soccer, how long is that game? So if I played 2 halves, that's 90 minutes. So 90, times 90. So that's a MET value. So MET minutes, I have 900 MET minutes by just that one soccer game. So that's a lot. You could think of something like lighter. So let's say like we went hiking, right? So we went hiking, which is a MET of 6. And so let's say we went hiking for like 25 minutes. So 6 times 25 is 150. And then let's say that I did this 3 times per week. So 150 times 3, that gets me 450. And so that's kind of what these MET minutes are. And the goal is to accumulate 500 to 1,000 MET minutes per week. And so yeah, kind of interesting. Lower met activities would be like yard work or vacuuming, cleaning around your house. That's like a met of like 3 or 4. You can think of like walking around to class as a met of like 3 or 4. So there's like lower, these are like high intense, vigorous exercise examples here, like actual workouts. But we can achieve these met minutes just by doing everyday activities. So yeah, just know what that met minutes are and like what that volume is. There's another formula, what we can do at the bottom here, and that's to calculate how many calories that we've burned per minute. This one's a little harder, and I won't ask you to do this. I will ask you to calculate met minutes based on someone's workout, like they worked out at this mets for this many minutes, this many days a week. And so you will calculate that. I won't ask you to do the one at the bottom, but it's actually really cool to know. And so we would do METs times 3.5 times body weight in kilograms divided by 200. And that gives how many calories you burned per minute. And then you can figure out how many minutes did I do this workout. And then you can look at how many total calories you burned, which is, again, really cool way to assess like energy expenditure in your workouts. All right, last P is for pattern and also progression. Okay, so we have 2 Ps here. Exercise may be performed in a continuous session or several bouts of 10 minutes each to accumulate that desired amount, like within a week or so. I prefer continuous sessions. I would rather get it all done at once. We're going to go and do, a 30, 45-minute workout, one continuous aerobic exercise, and then I'm done for the day. Several bouts is also acceptable, especially when you have a busy schedule and you want to go for a 10-minute jog and then in the morning, and then maybe like a 10-minute walk midday at lunch, and then another 10-minute walk or jog in the evening to basically accumulate that 30 minutes. And so that's, again, great way to do it if we don't have a lot of time during our day to exercise and we just have these shorter blocks. Again, as long as you're getting in those minutes, that's great. Next is progression. So a gradual progression is necessary in order to prevent injury and reduce overtraining. And so we want to slowly increase our total exercise volume. And we can do this by increasing the duration, so the time. Instead of like a 20-minute run, we're going to do a 25-minute run. We can also increase the frequency. And so instead of 3 days a week, I could increase that to 4 days a week of lifting weights or running, not lifting weights, because that's anaerobic. So this is just aerobic. So 4 days a week of running and cycling and walking, and increase that to 5 days a week later. Or we can focus on the intensity. So instead of going on a light jog at like a MET of 6, I could increase that to run at a MET level of 8. So basically just running harder, running faster, or cycling faster, or swimming faster, whatever it is. Gradual progression, like I said, helps to reduce stress fractures and ligament joint pain, just kind of helps keep the body healthy when we slowly do it. A good way to progress is doing a 2.5% increase. You can also, and you can do it more than 2.5, but like 2.5 to 10% increase in your like distance is a good way to start. And so if I run like 3 miles one day and I want to increase, what should I start with? I could do 3 miles and then I could do 3.25. So 3.25 miles. And then after I've achieved that, maybe I achieved that like twice, I could do 3.5 miles. And so it's just like this slow progression is going to be most reasonable to basically attain health benefits and reduce injury. All right, so everything I just went over is in this chart right here. And so this chart is helpful because it talks about everything I said, and it puts it in this nice little chart for you to study and for you to reference when answering quiz questions and exam questions, and just for you to know in general what these ACSM guidelines are, okay? This last thing here that I'll have you do is you will figure out where you fall on this scale. So what we're looking at is how many times per week are you doing strenuous exercise? How many times moderate? How many times light or mild exercise? And then you multiply it by either 9, 5, or 3. You get your total, and that puts you either in the active category, moderately active, or insufficiently active. And so you have to be doing this at least 15 minutes per session in order to actually count it for one of your times per week. But this is a good way to assess your activity level and to make sure that you are doing enough that is sufficient in order to achieve those health benefits. So you can complete this. And then you can also just think about, are you meeting ACSM guidelines that we just went over? Are you happy with where you fell in that little questionnaire category? So just something to think about. You don't have anything to do for this lecture, but you do have to know all those variables that we just went over. And then I want you to think about for yourself, if you're happy with where you fall for exercise guidelines, and is there anything that you can do or I can help you with in order for you to achieve them? Okay, because that's all I want. I want you to feel happy with your health status, with your fitness status, and try to start meeting those ACSM guidelines for aerobic exercise if you haven't already. And if there's any tips or things you need from me to help you get there, then let me know. The next lecture will be anaerobic exercise prescription, which will be our resistance training. Okay, so weightlifting. So we'll get there in our next lecture. Okay, well, that's it for now. I will see y'all later.